To make the multi-strand necklace, we've got two kinds of chain. We've got a very fine gold chain. This will be one of the strands. And we've got bead chain. This is chain that's made with beads worked right into the wire, into the chain. Comes just like this. And that'll be another one of the strands. And then we've got some seed beads so we can make the third strand. This hank of seed beads comes temporarily strung like this. We're just going to cut it off of these strings so we can use proper bead stringing wire. And we love this mix of colors. It's cobalt and turquoise and amber, but we wanted to add a little extra shine, so we selected some 11/0 gold seed beads to go with these. These are all the same size, 11/0. Then we've got this lovely little elephant charm. This is going to be the star of the show. Comes with a little jump ring. And to finish the ends, we're going to use clamshell bead tips, 2 of those in gold, crimp beads, these are size number 1 in gold, and a toggle clasp also in gold. The wire is 19 strand bead stringing wire that we're going to use for our bead stringing. This is a gold color. And then we're also going to use beading wire. This is different than bead stringing wire. It's 26 gauge and it's gold. And this is optional little bead bug. This will keep the beads from sliding off the bead stringing wire while we're working, but you can use masking tape if you want. For tools, we're going to use our chain nose pliers, and we're going to use our round nose pliers, and then we'll also need wire cutters. To get started making the multi-strand necklace, we're going to make one of the strands, and the first strand we're going to make is the bead stringing strand. So that's the strand that's going to use these 11/0 size seed beads. And we've got two kinds here. These were the ones that were on the temporary string like this. They came in a hank, it's called. And all we did was snip this with scissors and then pull the beads off this cotton thread so that we can restring it on better bead stringing wire. And we love this mix, but we thought it'd be fun to add these gold beads in. So I'm just gonna pop the lid off this little tube. Oh, spilled a few. And dump some of those in there so we can mix them right in with our other beads. So to get started with the bead stringing, we cut a piece of bead stringing wire, and this piece is 18 inches long. We're going to bead it 16 inches. 16 inches of the bead stringing wire will have beads on it. And this is that 19 strand bead stringing wire. I like to put something on the end like a bead bug so that the beads don't slide off the end while we're working. And if you don't have a bead bug, this little spring-loaded stopper, you could just put a piece of masking tape over this end. Then what we can do is start beading on the other end. So here's our other end. And for little beads like this, I think it's nice to dump the beads in your palm of your hand and then use the end of the bead stringing wire to kind of tip the beads onto the wire. It makes faster work of beading than if you tried to pick up each bead with your fingers and slide them on. It could take a very long time. And instead you can just tip them on. You can even just stab through and fish them on and see what you get. And I really am doing a random mix, so it doesn't matter to me what colors are next to what colors. I just like how they all look together like that. And once you get some on like that, you can slide them down to the end and then fish on some more beads. So we want this strand to have 16 inches worth of beads on it. And I'm just going to keep tipping these seed beads onto the bead stringing wire, and then I'll show you how we finish the ends for this strand. I'm just finishing up, putting on a few more of these seed beads, just fishing them onto the wire like that. And then I want to check and measure how long the beaded section is that I just did, because we want it to be 16 inches. So I have a yardstick here, and I'm just going to take the end with the bead bug and run it out to the beginning of the yardstick. And then I can line it up here and see I do have 16 inches beaded, so that's perfect. And now what we want to do is attach the ends of this beaded strand to our clasp. And we're going to use our clamshell bead tips for this. These are 2 little clamshell bead tips. And we're going to use 2 crimp beads. This is a little jar of crimp beads. We love keeping the crimp beads separate from the seed beads because they look just like gold seed beads, and we don't want to mix them up with our seed beads because these are actually little metal tubes and they're meant to be crimped onto the wire. And if we accidentally used a gold seed bead instead, they're glass, and if we crimped it, it would shatter. So we're going to keep these separate. And the way we use the clamshell bead tip is we start by feeding the end of the wire in through the hole in the bottom of the clamshell bead tip. There's a hole here, and I feed the wire up through the hole like that so that the clamshell is open towards the end of the wire. And then I'm going to feed on one of those crimp beads. There's our little crimp bead on the wire. And what we want to do is we want to actually flatten the crimp bead on the wire. So I'm going to separate it there from the clamshell. And I'm going to use the chain nose pliers to grasp the crimp bead. I'm going to move it actually out towards the end here a little bit. And I'm going to press that crimp closed. So I'm just giving it a good squeeze. And you can see that it flattens right on the wire. And then the way we use the clamshell bead tip is we slide it up over the crimp bead, and then we use the chain nose pliers and we gently press that clam closed. It's a concave little set of clams, and we don't want to press it too hard or they'll get dented, but we want to close it over the wire enough that it ends up looking like a little bead there at the end. Isn't that cute? Looks very nice and finished. We can get rid of this wire that's sticking out just by clipping it with the wire cutters. There we go. And now we can use this little loop to attach to the clasp. So I've got 2 parts to the clasp. It's a toggle clasp. And I can slide it on the round part. And then I like to use the round nose pliers for this to grab that open part of the loop and bend it closed like that. Just want to check it, make sure it's closed, and it is. And that's a beautiful way to finish the ends. It looks nice and tidy. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we want to slide all the beads down to this side so there's no slack. And here's our other end. We can remove our masking tape or bead bug, which I had a bead bug there. And we're going to do things the same way in the same order. We've got the second clamshell bead tip here, and I'm going to feed that end of the wire through the clamshell. And for this one, I'm going to actually pick up the crimp bead with my chain nose pliers and feed the wire in so that I can keep holding on to the crimp bead. There it is. Because what I want to do is push the crimp bead down into the clamshell. So the other end we did out at the end, out here. This one we want to push it so there's no slack in our wire. We want the beads to all be pressed together. So that means I need to flatten that crimp bead inside the clamshell up against the beads. So I'm reaching there and press it closed. Make sure it's on there. It is. I'm tugging and it's not coming off. And then I can trim the wire. Might be easier if I trim the wire first. So I'm going to try that this time. And then use the chain nose pliers to close that clam again, gently, so we don't dent it. But there's our clamshell closed. And then we've got the other side of the clasp, and we can feed it on to the loop. And then use the round nose pliers to sort of curl that loop closed. And this is a finished necklace as it is. You can see you could just clasp it like this. And that's how you do a bead stringing necklace. But we're going to add 2 more strands to make this a multi-strand pendant necklace. I'll show you how to do that next. So we made our first strand by doing bead stringing, but for the second strand, we're going to use beaded chain. This chain comes just like this, and you can get it at a bead store, you can buy it online, you can buy it at a bead show, and you buy it by the foot. it already comes with these beads wire work together to make this gorgeous chain. And we're going to do a little trick with this, and we're going to cut 2 of the beads off so that we can use them as part of our connector. So I'm going to cut with my wire cutters, I'm going to cut right through the wire of one of the links here and pull off that faceted crystal. And I need 2 of these, so I'm going to move up the chain a little bit. And again, I'm just cutting right through the chain wire work that they have there and pulling off that bead. So we're going to use those beads in this project. We want to use these because they match the chain. Now what I want to do is measure 16.5 inches of the bead chain. But first, I'm going to remove the rest of that link. When I cut the link and pulled the bead off, it left behind part of a link. So I'm going to very carefully look at which part is the old link and which one is the new link, and I'm just going to cut through the wire of the old link. And then I can throw that away. And now I want to measure 16.5 inches of this beautiful beaded chain. I have a little yardstick here. I'm just going to take the bead chain. I'm going to run one end all the way down to the end of the yardstick. This link will be our last link because here's 16.5 on the yardstick. So I'm going to hold on to that. And to cut this, I'm going to cut the link we're not using. This link is not in our 16.5. The one I'm holding is the last one of the 16.5. So I want to make sure I'm cutting the other link. I'm just going to reach in there and snip it. I cut the other link so that I still have a complete loop on this one. I'll save the rest of this gorgeous bead chain for another project. So now we want to take this will be our second strand, and we want to attach it to our beaded strand that we made before. And to do that, we're going to do a little bit of wire work. We're going to use a different kind of wire. For this one, we used bead stringing wire, which is soft and flexible. For this one, we're going to use beading wire. This is 26 gauge beading wire. And this is the kind of wire that when you bend it, it stays bent like that. It's very easy to bend. We need 2 pieces. Each one should be about 3 inches long, and I already cut 2 pieces for us. So here's our first piece. What we're going to do is we're going to make a little connector from the end of the beaded chain to the clasp, and that's how we're going to attach the beaded chain to the multi-strand necklace. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. We're going to use our round nose pliers. We're going to come about 1/3 of the way down on this 3-inch piece of wire and make a 90-degree bend in the wire, like that. And then I'm going to reposition the pliers to the top of that bend, and I'm going to push the short tail up and over the top jaw of the pliers. I'm trying to make a loop, but I can't go all the way around because the bottom jaw is in the way. So I slide the bottom jaw in instead. That way I'm free to pull that tail all the way around. And now I have a complete loop there. What I want to do is I want to attach this loop to our bead chain. So I'm going to find the end of the bead chain and slide on that loop and slide it past the crisscross, and now we've got that on the bead chain. And next I want to hold that loop we made across with the round nose pliers, and then I'm going to pull this tail around 2 times to make a wrapped loop like that. Then I'm just going to trim the end of that wire with my wire cutters. And then if you have a little piece sticking out like that, I have a tiny piece sticking out, you can use your chain nose pliers to push that down. Now what we're going to do, this is the little trick, we're going to use one of those beads that we borrowed from the chain, and we're going to feed it onto the wire. We're making a new link in the chain and connect it onto the necklace. The chain had all closed links, so we needed to make a new piece that has an open link. So I'm going to repeat what I did before. After that bead, I'm going to make a 90-degree bend where I'm holding it with the round nose pliers. And then I'm going to reposition to the top of that bend, and I'm going to make that loop again. Same way we did before, reposition to the bottom and pull that all the way around. There's our loop. Now we can take this end and we can attach it to our necklace. So we have the loop on the bottom of the toggle, and I'm going to feed the wire in to the toggle there and slide it down. And then I just need to get it past that little crisscross. So it goes into the circle. There it is. And now I'm going to do the same thing we did before. I'm trying to get that toggle out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. I'm grabbing the loop that we made across with the round nose pliers. I'm going to pull that tail around 2 times like that. And then I'm going to reach in here with the wire cutters and trim that wire. Oh, it doesn't want to break off. There we go. Now you can see that what the magic is here. We have created a link in the chain that matches the rest of our chain, but we're able to attach it to the toggle clasp like that. Looks so pretty side by side with our beaded strand. So now I'm going to go to the other end and I'm going to repeat what we did to make another wrapped loop. I'm going to take our 3-inch piece of wire, come down about 1 inch, make a 90-degree bend, go to the top of that bend like that, push that wire around to make a loop, reposition to the bottom jaws so I can finish that loop, find the bottom last link in our chain and slide that on, and then hold the loop across and pull the tail around 2 times and trim that wire. So we're imitating exactly the way they made the chain, and that's why we borrowed the exact beads off of our chain. So I feed on the bead, and then I'm going to repeat what we did to make another wrapped loop. I make a 90-degree bend, reposition to the top, push over the top all the way around, can't go any further, so I put the bottom jaw in there so I can finish making that loop. And now I'm going to go to the other side of our clasp, the round part of the toggle, and I'm going to slide that in, and then I can hold that loop across to pull the wire around 2 times, and then trim that wire. And this also could be a necklace by itself. This double strand looks so nice together, but we're going to add 1 more strand, and I'll show you how to do that next. To make the 3rd strand, what you'll want to do is cut a 17-inch piece of the very fine gold chain. So this will be the longest strand in the multi-strand necklace. If you remember when we did the beaded strand, the first strand was 16 inches, the beaded one with the seed beads. The second strand was 16.5. And now we're going to do the 3rd one, and it will be 17 inches. And that way they'll hang at different lengths when you wear the necklace. We want to feed on our wonderful elephant charm onto the onto the chain. Just going to drop that chain in through the jump ring there. Bring it about to the center. And now all we have to do is connect the ends of this chain to the clasp like we did with the last beaded chain. This chain is so fine, it's too small to use a jump ring. So we're going to connect the same way we did with the beaded chain by making wrapped loops. So to do that, we have the same wire we used for the beaded chain, and I cut 2 lengths about 3 inches each to make our connectors. So here's our first piece of wire, and we're going to use the round nose pliers. We're going to come about 1/3 of the way down, just like we did before, make a 90-degree bend in the wire, reposition to the top of the bend, push the wire over the top to make a loop. Can't finish that loop because the bottom jaw of the round nose pliers is in the way, so I put the bottom jaw in the loop and pull the wire all the way around. Then I want to feed the end of the chain onto the wire. This is why we're using 26 gauge wire, which is smaller, finer, and thinner than 24 gauge wire, so that it will fit inside the link of the spine chain. So now our chain is connected, and I can hold that loop across with the round nose pliers and pull the tail around 2 times like we did before. that is a wrapped loop right there. And then I'm going to reach in there and trim that wire. You want to trim as close to the project as you can without cutting through the project. And then when we connected our bead chain, we used one of the beads from the bead chain in the middle of our wrapped loop connector. So I went and picked out 2 of our gold seed beads. These are the beads that we used when we made the beaded section of the necklace. I just picked out 2 of the gold ones because it'll blend right in with our gold wire and our gold chain. I'm going to feed that on. And that'll be just a nice little detail on our connector. Then I want to make another wrapped loop in the end of this wire. I grab the wire just above the bead that we added and I make a 90-degree bend like we did before. Reposition my pliers to the top of the bend. Make a loop over the pliers. Have to reposition the bottom jaw into the loop to pull that all the way around. And then before I close that by wrapping that loop, I want to attach it to our necklace. So here's our necklace, and we've got the beaded strand on top, like that, and then the bead chain will be the second one. And so I just want to add this in the right order. I'm going to add it underneath the bead chain. So I've got the bead stringing beads on top with the seed beads, the bead chain in the middle, and I'm going to add this wire, fit it right up through the toggle clasp ring there. And it's getting crowded in there now, so I'm going to have to wiggle it a little bit. And now I want to close that loop. I'm going to turn the project around, so I'm using my right hand and the round nose pliers to hold that loop across, and then my left hand I can pull the wire end around to make 2 wraps like that. So that wrapped loop has the loop we made, 2 wraps, our seed bead, 2 wraps, and the loop. Looks just like the chain that we used. Chain is made just the same way. Theirs is a little finer work, tiny work. And then I trim the wire like that. And to attach this end to the other end of the clasp, I've got another piece of 3-inch wire. I'm going to do the same thing again. 90-degree bend, make a loop in the top, finish that loop, attach it to the chain, like that, and then finish that wrapped loop by wrapping that tail around 2 times, and then trim. I want to trim that a little more close. That's going to stick out and poke me, and I don't want that. Here's our seed bead, the gold seed bead. And feed that onto the wire. And now to finish it off, we're going to make another wrapped loop here in the end of the wire. Pinch right above the bead, 90-degree bend, make the loop by pushing that wire around the pliers. We're letting the pliers be sort of a mandrel. And then before I wrap it, I want to feed it onto the other clasp. So I've still got this in the order I want it. I've got the bead stringing project at the top with the seed beads. I've got the bead chain in the middle. And now I'm going to feed the wire of our component here that we just made. I'm going to feed that in to our clasp. And then hold that loop across, pull that wire around 2 times, and then reach in there and trim that wire like that. And that is our multi-strand necklace featuring our elephant charm.